I know it. I tell you what, it's been something.
It has
And you
been.
know, I have that academy um, in the county. I have an academy with communities and schools of grades 6, 7, and 8.
Right.
So we're operating virtually as well at this point. So I was over there today. Uh,
Well, I just tell you, for the little ones, the K2 children, they learn so much by doing and feeling and touching and
mhm.
movement, and I just really worry about them.
I do, but I think the big ones are ready to get back to some type of normalcy as well. So anyway, well, it's after 7 o'clock. I see our time is here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope more join. 29 of our students are with us, so I hope that we have the rest of them before the evening's over with. But we thank those of you that are here for being here, and welcome to week 3. Dr. Revis, I can't believe that we're already in week 3. It is, I mean, if I told you people, it flies by fast. That's why you will hear us say over and over and over again, don't procrastinate, do this, do that, because time, before you look, you'll be midway this semester, you will have finished the APSL, and you will be ready to start on the next evidence before you can bat your eyes almost. But um, uh, Dr. Revis, would you like to bring greetings as well?
Yes, good evening, everyone. And I know you've been hard at work. I have been looking at some good work, and I've appreciated your staying up with the process, and you're heeding our words about keeping those timelines, and I do appreciate that. And
And,
we'll talk more about task 1 in just a moment.
and we can, and you can go ahead and talk about that uh, while you're at it, Dr. Revis. Just go ahead
Okay.
and lead in. We can skip around if we need to.
Okay. Well, I was real pleased with the work that I got in discussion board. And if you had just minor changes, I told you what those were and then told you to make those changes. And you were ready to upload that to me in the assignment Dropbox. If you had several minor things or we needed a little more work on it, I noted those to you and asked you to resubmit those to me again for me to look over again before you put them in for final evaluation. So if you're resubmitting because I've asked you to, you go back to that place and discussion board and you drop it again and I can pick it up from there. While we're in the revision stage, once you put it in for final evaluation, that's it, we're done, okay? So, but I was real pleased with it. Some of you struggled a little bit with your references. And again, go back to your library resources and make sure that you're using correct reference format for APA 7. The most common thing that I saw in the reference section is what you were capitalizing the titles of articles and journals, and just go back and look at those things again to make sure you're correct on that format. But overall, I was very pleased. I had everyone who's currently enrolled and active in the course, everyone met their 9 o'clock deadline on Monday, Sunday evening. So I was pleased. Good. I was really pleased with that.
Well, I've got 2 classes, and I will say overall, I would say more than 95%. I don't know what that would be, but more than 95% did exactly what they were supposed to do. The work was in on time, quality work. You have paid attention, and as Dr. Revis said, you're at the review stage now, and remember that section is for peer and instructor review, and that is where Dr. Revis and I are going to look at everything that you submit. We make comments there, we actually give you a grade, but this is an opportunity. If we send it back, if it was not 100 the first time, and we send it back and we say, fix so-and-so, do this, do that, you resubmit it back to the same place, we give you opportunities to keep sending it back at that point to get 100. Now, put 2 and 2 together, people. If you get 100 there, and we say it's all right, guess what you're going to get for the final evaluation? You're going to get 100 there as well. So we basically are fixing, you can, if you do what we ask you to do, you can't do anything but win in this game. So this is an opportunity, and we hold your hand a lot to begin with. It doesn't always happen this way, but to begin with, we hold your hand a lot and we give you a lot of direct, because it's necessary for you to get from point A to point B. So we're going to do a lot of hand holding right now and helping you with things. But if you did not make 100 on that task, fix what I told you to fix and resubmit it back to the discussion board. I'm going to look at it. Dr. Revis is going to look at it, and we're going to either tell you, you know, most of the time it's fixed. We're going to give you the 100. We're going to tell you to complete the peer review process and move on to the next task. And then we will tell you at some point, we're not telling you now because we won't, that at some point we may go ahead and tell you, you know, go ahead and submit for a final grade. We're not at that point yet. That's what you will do this week, and we're going to talk about what is due at the end of this week in just a minute. But overall, great work. Those of you, now I can't say, Dr. Revis, I've got 2 or 3 that I have not seen work from, and that's not good. That's not good. And if you're online tonight and I haven't seen your work, you know, shame on you. You know, we've told you you cannot keep up in this program if you don't turn your work in on time. And remember, we talked about last week, there's an attendance policy. We will be given instructions before this week's over with, probably, Dr. Revis, that the work that is the work that is due next Sunday night, the end of this week, if it's not turned in on time on Monday morning, we will have to go into the system and we will have to show them as being absent for the week. So, and the university is looking at that because they have an attendance policy. So I'm asking you, for your own sake, keep up with your work, turn it in on schedule, and do what you're supposed to do. Very quickly, let's look at this agenda that I have up here, and then I'm going to get away from it. This is actually posted, and Dr. Revis will do the same thing. It's posted under week 3 in Blackboard. But we've got a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to very quickly look at week 3 this week, and then I'll look at week 4. We've commented on task 1 already. We're going to do a review of task 2 that we talked about last week. Dr. Revis is going to, or both of us are going to talk about the peer review process. Dr. Revis, I have gotten, probably more than 50% of them have already completed the peer review process, and they're the best I have ever had with peer reviews. So what was said over the last week, they have taken heed to it. Excellent work. And then I'm going to go into what week 5 looks like with your first Zoom video that you work with your team with. Then we're going to go into just a look at task 3 because some of you will be at that place, and Dr. Revis is going to, and I are going to talk about prompts 1 and 2. Then Dr. Revis has a special topic presentation, and we're going to end with question and answers. So we do have a lot to go over tonight, but I've put Dr. Revis and me both on a time schedule, hoping that we can adhere to it and keep up. I'm going to have to take our pictures out for just a minute. The video panel. I want you to look at this. This is week 3. And again, remember that you're responsible for, we're still working with the professional learning community. Just remember, this is your responsibility here to read from your textbooks and to apply them to the work that you're doing and the research that you're doing. Make sure that you are, when possible, that you're citing the works of Aldrich and any of the other authors from the textbooks that you're using. I want you to look at the assignment section. This is for this week. Everything is in red, and if you remember, we said that everything that is in red does refer to evidence 1, the APSL. What is due by Sunday at 9 o'clock? The Absol Task 1 revision. That means that you will fix anything that's wrong with it, and when you submit it this time, it goes to the assignment Dropbox over here in Blackboard, to the Absol assignment Dropbox right here, and you're going to submit it for a final grade, and this is where Dr. Revis and I will give you that final grade. Now, again, just think about this. If Dr. Revis and I have told you that at the review stage that your work is ready to move on, and we give you 100, when it gets there, guess what? You've got your 100. So, it just makes sense at this review stage to go ahead and fix it, and to fix it right, so that when it gets there, that we can automatically give you the 100 that you've worked for. And then what else is due? Now, remember, we told you last week that beginning this week that you would submit something for final evaluation, and at the same time that there would be something for review. That's where we are. You will submit the Absol Task 1 this week for a final evaluation, a final grade, but at the same time, the Absol Task 2 will be submitted in discussion board for the peers to look at it and for Dr. Revis and I to look at it and to make comments on. In addition, what else is due this week? The Absol Task 1 peer reviews, 2 of them. One, for two of your peers, you must complete the reviews. And like I said, many of you have already done that. Dr. Revis is going to briefly go over that. And I think for the most part, you've got it. And again, if you haven't set up your private Zoom account, then you need to do that as well. I want to very quickly glance at week 4, because remember, I told you that you have to look at what you've got to do this week and then what's coming up at all times. So let's look at what is, if it'll come up. It's slow. Okay, there it is. Again, all of this is, you're responsible for all of this, but I want you to look at the assignments. At the end of week 4, this week you're going to turn it in, task 2 for review, but the next week you're going to turn it in for a final grade. And while you're turning that in for a final grade, the task 3 will be submitted for our review, and then the task 2 peer reviews that you'll be doing for task 2 will be submitted as well. This is week 4. So this gives us an idea of how we are pacing ourselves throughout this course. Dr. Revis, if you would, go ahead, and I'm going to skip around a minute, go ahead and briefly talk about the peer review process. And let me bring our pictures back up. Talk briefly, I don't think we have to say a whole lot, but just some reminders about the peer review process.
Okay, just reiterating what Dr. Stedman said, for those of you who've turned it in to me, it's been the most thorough, formative feedback that I have seen a class do for me personally, and I do appreciate that. You are taking this very seriously, so I do appreciate that. So here's what some of you are getting a little confused on. When you are giving feedback to your peers, you give them feedback in the discussion board. Can we go there for a moment and show them where that is?
Yes. Okay, you go back to, okay.
I think it's all the way down, yeah.
And you have to create a thread.
Yeah, and that's where you will give your feedback to the 2 colleagues that you are providing a review for. All right. However, to get a grade from us, you have to go over and drop those same things in the completed peer review drop.
Okay. And I'm going to click on that because I want them to see this.
And when you do that, there are 2 drop boxes. One for each peer review that you do for the Absol Task 1. If you put them both in that top drop box, guess what? We can't give you any grade except for one of them. So be sure you've got 2 drop boxes, one for each of your peer reviews that Dr. Stedman and I are going to assess you on.
Okay. And Dr. Revis, I want you to see this. You'll see there, task 1, 2 peer reviews, task 2 peer reviews, task 3, 2 peer reviews. Go down to task 4, 2 peer reviews. You've got 5 tasks, but guess what? There's not a peer review for task 5. Somebody asked that question this week to me. You do not have, those are your competencies that you'll be working with, and there is not a task review for task 5. So this is, again, it's the work that you're doing, that the people have done, excellent job, and those that have not done their work, I'm sure that you're going to do good work as well with this. If you have any questions, just reach out to Dr. Revis and me about that. But I think they've got this, Dr. Revis.
I do too. I was very pleased with the work.
Yeah, I'm going to still skip around while I'm here. I want you to look at the very last thing under this section. What does it say? Zoom video for APSL task 1 and 2. After next week, you will have completed task 1 and 2. That would be at the end of week 4. You will have completed task 1 and 2. But you will be into task 2 this week. So I would say next week at some point, your Zoom team needs to get together, and you need to decide when the Zoom team is going to get together. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to come together and you're going to do your own Zoom video for looking at the APSL task 1 and 2. Well, what do we do when we get there? You're going to have a scholarly discussion about all that you've learned up to this point about everything that's involved in the APSL development for task 1 and 2. You're going to talk about the struggles that you may have had. You're going to share with each other that. You're not going to just sit there and read what you've already submitted to them with their peer reviews. That's not necessary. You can talk about some things from that, but this is an opportunity to have a scholarly discussion about the APSL development and where you are at this point. Now, we say task 1 and 2, but guess what? If you're smart, you're going to go ahead and look at task 3, task 4, and task 5, and you're going to talk about it as a group, the things to look that you've got to look forward to as well. We're going to look at how well, whoever is the Zoom master you choose, we're going to look at your leadership. We're going to look and see if everybody is actively engaged in the conversation. We're going to listen for opportunities to talk about the research that you've already done, the reading that you've already done. Our ears are going to be attuned to those things that we may not have talked about, but if you've been doing your work and doing the things that you're supposed to have been doing on your own, it's going to come out in these conversations. This is a scholarly discussion. It's not about what's on sale at Belk the weekend. It's not about, nothing else but the APSL and everything that goes along with it. So somebody from your Zoom group, take the initiative, go ahead and move forward and deciding when this is going to happen. Sometime during week 4, I would say go ahead week 4. You can do it week 5 because it's not due until the end of week 5, but I would go ahead and make plans for it. This is something that you could go ahead and get off your plate during week 4 by planning, but it's not due until the end of week 5, but it's something after next week that you can go ahead and get started with. But now is the time to begin planning for that because of everybody's work schedules. We will revisit this again next Tuesday if you have any questions after you've had a chance to look at it. What do? You will click on this, and guess what? You're going to, somebody, whoever the Zoom leader is, you're going to process a video. You're going to send that link to everybody in your group, and everybody will send to Dr. Revis and me the same link for a grade. We know who's in the group. We will only have to look at one video per group, and all of you will get a grade. Will we get the same grade? Not necessarily, because if it's Joel's group, and I'm using Joel because I see him again, if it's Joel's group and Joel does a lot of the work, but then somebody else in the group does a little bit of work or nothing or doesn't talk, guess what? It's not fair for them to get the same grade that Joel would get. So we're going to look at everybody doing their fair share in when it comes to this. But you'll have the same Zoom link, and we'll look at one Zoom from the group, and we can make our assessment of everybody based on looking at that one link. So does everybody understand at this point what we're asking you, or what you need to at least look at and to begin preparing for? Okay. I want us to take a review of, here we are.
Dr. Stedman.
Yes, go ahead, Joel.
Could we ask a question here?
Sure.
Within my Zoom team and on the discussion on the chat board here, there's some confusion, at least from my perspective. We were under the impression that we needed to meet as a Zoom team this week to talk about the peer reviews that we did for our task 1. Is that incorrect?
No, you don't have to do any Zoom. Now you can Zoom anytime you want to and talk, but we're not asking you to do anything until it gets to week 5. The Zoom peer reviews, all you're doing is just giving them the feedback. You're submitting just like you are to Dr. Revis and me. But you don't have to Zoom and talk about that, no.
And so the Zoom that we'll have either next week or the following is to discuss pretty much the whole APSL.
And specifically the task 1 and 2, because you will have completed those at that time.
Great, thank you so much.
But you can look at you can talk about the future development of the APSL as well. But that's a good question. I will say this, Dr. Revis, I did get a text message from somebody today, or an email, and they said that they had not heard that they had completed their peer reviews, but they had not gotten any feedback for themselves. We do ask that you try to complete the peer reviews as soon as possible after Sunday night, Monday morning, simply because if you wait until the end of this week and a person is doing their work, the peer reviews really are not going to benefit them like we want them to benefit them if you wait too late in the week to get that done. So please put that as a priority to work on your peer reviews earlier in the week and not later in the week. Dr. Revis, don't you think that's a fair assessment?
Yes, that's very fair. In fact, that's one of the first things I would start working on Mondays of every Monday, is looking at and doing my peer reviews. Get those out of the way, and then you can start looking for your revision. Now, Dr. Stedman grades his and assesses his students a little quicker than I.
Okay.
So, Dr. Stedman.
Yes.
So just to go back to the peer reviews, when we go to the discussion board, just to clarify, are we going to our peer that we're reviewing's thread and then replying in that thread, or creating an entirely new thread?
You can create a new thread.
Okay, can we also reply to the thread that they had made?
You can, yes. As long as they get it back, it doesn't matter.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you.
I think replying back to their original thread helps them find it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah, but either way, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
So we're okay with it. But you're right, Dr. Revis. Very quickly, we're going to have to move on so we can have some discussion time at the end as well.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, if we have our work from that we need to do our peer review, when can we submit it? What's the latest? Like, can we do it by like that Wednesday before you or Dr. Revis looks at it to tell us what we may need to do before turning it back into Sunday?
We're not going to give you feedback on the peer review. That will be, we will do it on your work. Now, if something is just real off base, we'll send it back and tell you to, that you're real off base. But that is kind of like you get a one-shot deal on that.
Okay, 'cause I was thinking, like she said, like how you were saying, you guys will look at the work and then tell us what to resubmit.
That was only for the task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, and task 5 of the APSL. But all the other work, there's not going to be multiple opportunities because we don't have time to do that. So, we're asking you with that. Now, however, if there is a problem, we're going to address that individually with students so that you don't continue to have that same problem. And I have sent them back before and said, you missed the mark on this. I'm going to take this out and I want you to fix it and I want you to resubmit it. But as a general rule, when you submit your peer review for our evaluation, it's a one-shot deal with that. So,
I'm sorry, maybe I worded that wrong. I meant for task 1, like after our peers review it and we need to make our corrections that the peers say. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to ask.
I'm sorry. Yes, if I've responded back and Dr. Revis has responded back, usually I will say, not usually, I will always say resubmit this for my review. If I don't say resubmit this for my review, that means that you fix it and you move on. If I need to see something again, then I will say, or if you didn't get 100 the first time, that automatically tells you resubmit it for our review so you can get it to 100. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, with that, with the task at the review stage, we give you multiple opportunities so that when it's finally submitted, it's nothing but right if you do what we ask you to do. The peer reviews are good. Let me say this. The peer reviews are good. Now, but you have to remember that all of you are, for the most part, in a new territory. None of you are experts in this. You're striving to become experts in this area, but you're not experts in it. So this is practice time, and you may not agree with your peer review. You may say that I don't, I respect what that person said, but that may not be how I see my work. And if you're okay with how you've got it and you have satisfied what I ask you and what Dr. Revis asked you, then that really is all that matters. However, we don't want to discredit the peer reviews because a lot of good things can come from that. And we look at so much work, you see things sometimes that I don't see. You'll catch something that I will not catch the first time because I'm not specifically looking at that. And I will tell you too, I have deliberately not addressed some things before just to see if in the peer reviews they are caught. And it's because it is a learning process for you. But the peer reviews are for you to learn how to give feedback, constructive feedback, and we want it to help the person that you're sending it to, but guess who it's helping the most? It's helping you as an individual learning how to write and how to critique those things. What Dr. Revis and I say at the review stage is really the most important. And once you satisfy that, for the most part, unless we miss something, you will have satisfied the requirements for making that review and moving on.
And that kind of cycles back to the question about, I haven't received a peer review. Guys, don't hold up your review process. As long as you've gotten feedback from Dr. Stedman or me, you start revising immediately. Don't let the lack of peer reviews keep you and bog you down from revising and having a finished product ready for Sunday evening.
And you just remember this, if you complete your 2 peer reviews, you've done everything you need to do. You're going to get your grade. If somebody else doesn't do theirs, then that, you know, that's going to be their problem. You complete yours and you move on.
Dr. Stedman, I had a quick question about
Sure.
one of the requirements for the rubric.
Mm-hmm.
Under mechanics and grammar, there's a note here stating evaluators are instructed to return evidence narratives to the candidate that contain errors. Now, can you kind of elaborate on what all that requirement is asking us as evaluators to do?
You don't have you can make comments there, but you don't have to return any work. That I'm not saying disregard that completely, but don't camp out there. You don't have time to critique and edit somebody else's work completely. If you pick up on some minor things, I'm not going to tell somebody. I'll say go back and check your grammar, your verb tenses, you know, things like that. But I'm not going to sit and camp out and do somebody's work for them either. So you're not required to do that.
Okay, so just one upload of the peer review feedback template is all that will suffice for that.
You're exactly right. Yes.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
That's a good question. Okay, let's move on to task 2, prompt 1 very quickly. Just remember, at this point, you will have completed task 1. You've met with your committee. You've given them directions. Now is the time where the rubber really meets the road. Look at this, and again, follow the template directions and look at your example. Again, I'm looking at the helpful hints document because it breaks it down more. But with task 1, there's 2 prompts. Task 1, this is going to be your heading, data collection strategies. Again, as I said last week, you're sitting down with your team or you're Zooming with your team and you're just simply narratively going to talk about in here, what are the strategies that we're going to use to collect all the data that we need to look at so that we can identify eventually what our most pressing need is. So this is your data collection strategies. Where are you going to get things from? What are you going to get? You know, what's out there that you can use? And again, don't discredit anything. If it's data, then you pull it in there and you talk about it. You don't have to use it, but I would pull it in there as a strategy so that I can make sure that I'm not missing anything. Then the next heading, the heading is highlighted in yellow, criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Okay, you've put everything out on the table. You've collected all of this stuff. Now, what criteria are you going to put in place? What is the process that you're going to begin looking at? You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a plan so that you can begin identifying what the most pressing need is. Remember, I said last week, it's kind of like a funnel. You start big at the top because that's all this stuff that you've got on the table. And then it's like a tornado funnel. You start narrowing it down. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. The more you talk, the more you look at it, you know, the smaller it gets. So right here, what is your process? What procedures? How are you going to move forward once you get all this stuff in number 1? Then number 3, your heading is collaborative data analysis. You've got all this, you got your procedure in place. Now, you're going to collaborate, you're going to analyze that data. You're going to tear it from left to right, up and down, everything that you can anything you can talk about it. That's what's going to happen there. You're going to disaggregate the data as thoroughly as you can. And again, all of these things, you're going to write about what you and your group are actually doing. And then once you've done that, once you collaborate with the data analysis, then in the very end, all of this should come to a point. And that point at the end should be, your heading is most pressing need. After doing everything in 1, 2, and 3 above, then you should say, as a result of all of this, the committee and I have decided that this is the most pressing need at our school and why. This is the most pressing need and why. And this is what you're actually going to, once you do this, then you're going to go to task 2. Everything you've talked about in task 1. Now you've talked about it, you've put it out there. Guess what you're going to get to do this time? You're going to get to graphically represent everything that you've talked about up there. You will graphically represent the work done narratively in prompt 1 in the forms of charts, tables, graphs, etc. These visuals are to be used to illustrate and support the data analysis and conclusions. Well, where am I going to get all this stuff from? From your report card. If you go to your state report card, guess what? If you go click on, there's 3 columns there. And if you go to the middle column and click you can go to your district, go to your school. And if you'll click on that middle column with your state report card, it will give you graphs, charts, everything else. And guess what? Don't reinvent the wheel. All you got to do is copy and paste if it applies to what you're doing. So that's where you can get some graphic information. Please remember to identify your graphic work as figures according to APA. Please remember that all graphics should include a narrative explanation of what is being presented. I know you've talked about things up there in task 1, but if you put any type of graphic in number 2, then don't just put something there and not let Dr. Revis and me know what we need to know what we're looking at. So make sure that there is enough information there that briefly lets us know what that graphic is. And just remember, with every task, we said you would have a reference section as applicable, and then after that, there would be an appendices as applicable. And the appendices, at this point, at a minimum, you're always going to have an agenda of your meeting and meeting minutes. At a minimum, you're always going to have that at this point. Now, once task 2, prompts 1 and 2 are complete, you are to schedule a meeting with your principal or your leadership team. You may have to do this virtually. I don't care, or we don't care, as long as you are presenting you're presenting the findings of where you are at this point with task 1 and 2 of the APSL. And you're going to say to your principal, you're going to show your principal, this is what the team and I have done, and this is our conclusion. As a result of all of this, we feel like that this is the most pressing need at the school. You're actually going to document this at the end of task 2 somewhere. You're going to document your proof that you have met with your principal. It can be in a narrative form. It can be a picture of you talking to your principal. It can be an agenda, a PowerPoint presentation. We don't care. But you must prove that you have presented to your principal. Now, guess what? At this point, your principal might say, you know, that's great, and my blessings are with you. I want you to move on, and this is what I want you and the committee to do. This is the PLC that I want you to form. This is the action plan that I want you to eventually develop. But then they may not. Your principal may say, that's all well and good, but this is what I want you to do. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to do what your principal wants you to do. And you're just simply going to tell us that when I met with my administration, that they received the information that that the committee and I presented. However, they feel like that we need to move in a different direction, and this is why. And you will simply say that, and then from that point on, you will go in the direction that your principal wants you to move in, or if they allow you to do the most pressing need, you will continue with that most pressing need and move on. Dr. Revis, any comments at this point that you'd like to make there?
No, I think you've covered it. We do have a question for clarification. Is the meeting with the principal have to take place before we submit task 2 on Sunday evening?
We would like for it to. Well, it's there for review Sunday evening. No, you will have until it's finally till you will have until the next week to submit it. However, if you have not met with your principal before it's submitted, you can submit it for review. If you have not met with your principal, try to. But if for some reason you have not, you need to indicate to us when you plan to meet with your principal, and then before it is finally submitted for any final grade, we will need to see it for review again to make sure that you've got all that in there. Does
Oh,
that
where
answer that
does-
question?
Where does the principal meeting go in this format?
Okay, you can put it in your appendices. You can put it at the very end of prompt number 2. Actually, you could put it at the end of prompt 2 before you do your reference section there. It's not in there, and that part is not clear, but it actually could go into that section, or you could place it in your appendices section.
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I had one quick question here about the information in green. What I'm gleaning is that there are 2 requirements and 1 optional. So we're required to have a picture of us presenting and also a PowerPoint and agenda.
At a
And then
minimum.
the video is optional. Those are like the 4 pieces that we need.
Right. You don't have to have a video, but we're saying that is highly recommended. But we must have an agenda / PowerPoint agenda of you meeting with your administration. And that's why I said that part can easily go under your appendices.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good questions.
So like I scheduled my meeting with the admin team on Monday. So you're saying when I submit task 2 on Blackboard, I just need to indicate that my meeting is on Monday?
You indicate that, but then before it's submitted for a final grade, we have to see the results of your meeting.
Okay, so then once I meet and type it up, then I'll resubmit it on Blackboard for you guys to review.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question again. Dr. Revis, any questions at this point, or anything else?
Well, we've got lots of questions in discussion in the chat box. Can we use an email as proof we communicated with the principal if they cannot meet with us virtually or otherwise by the due date? You know, I would say you're gonna have to meet with them virtually before it's due for final. But remember, you've got this week and next week in order to do that. And if I were you, I would go ahead and reach out to the principal and try to schedule something for next week, at the beginning of next week. So you've got time to finish putting that piece in.
Right. The meeting has to happen, whether it's virtually or face to face. There has to be a meeting with the principal at this point. You cannot move forward without their blessings.
Okay, a question: can we use charts and tables in prompt 1, or just narrative form?
Just narrative in prompt 1. All tables and things come in prompt 2. You talk about it in number 1, and you talk about it in number 1, and you show us in number 2. Everything here is in narrative form.
But be sure in prompt 2, don't just put an arbitrary table out there. You're going to have to give a sentence or 2 a lead in of what it is.
And if it's in number 2, it must relate back to whatever you have talked about in prompt 1. It must match.
And if you have a video, yes, you can post that link in your appendices.
Right. But if you have a video, make sure that we see, if there was a PowerPoint presented, we need to see the slides of your PowerPoint, and we need to see, that will serve proof, and an agenda. If you have an agenda, that will help us as well. That's great proof.
So the picture, the PowerPoint, and then the agenda should be 3 separate things. Like it doesn't need to be all one.
Well, it can be, as long as you've got enough proof. And we put lots of things down there. Some people don't feel comfortable with a picture. We highly recommend it, but they don't feel comfortable. Some principals won't let you video them. And so you can't do what they won't allow you to do, but you can do a PowerPoint presentation, and you can put your PowerPoint presentation in there as proof that you've presented. And then, you know, narratively talk about the presentation. But if you can get all 3 of them, the more artifacts you can get in there, the better the quality paper you're going to have and the better your work's going to be. Okay. I don't want to overdo it. I was going to go into task 3 and just talk about it, Dr. Revis, but I don't think I am. I think it'll be too much for him right now.
Okay.
We will be talking about task 3 next week. Now, if any of you are very proactive and you get to that point, I think it's self-explained. You can read it and you can move forward with it, but we will go into full discussion with this next week. And at that point, Dr. Revis, this is where the annotated bibliography comes in place. And Dr. Revis is going to do a presentation on the annotated bibliography as well next week. So I just think we'll just have to camp out with task 3 next week.
Okay.
They have a lot to do with task 2 at this point. Dr. Revis, we were going to do that special presentation, but I'm going to hold off on that. We're not going to do that decision making tonight. I think we can move on with that. I want us to end with to make sure that we've addressed all questions at this point, because great questions, and I really like you know how well you've just asked us good questions, and overall the questions help everybody better understand what they're doing. But at this point, we're just going to open it up for the rest of the time to make sure that you are clear with what you've got to do and that you're comfortable with moving on with task 2.
So the graphs for prompt 2, they're not things that we have to create. It's the same graphics and reports we use to write our narratives.
That you're exactly right. You're not creating anything yourself. You could, but you don't have to. You really don't have time to do all that. That information is already out there. Use what is out there. Your state report card has lots and lots of stuff that you can use. Your system, even your district with the benchmark testings that were done, they have results. All of this stuff is usually on. It should be online. Your district information should be online somewhere.
Dr. Stedman?
Yes.
The document that you were just presenting, can you tell us or show us where that's at in Blackboard so that I make sure I'm looking at the right thing?
Yes, let me go back and share my screen.
And as you're looking for it, I heard you say that the evidences we needed at a minimum were an agenda and meeting minutes, but then I heard someone mention a PowerPoint.
That is when you present.
Can you clarify that for me?
That is when you present task 2 to your principal.
Okay.
I said you know it's highly recommended that you present your findings from the committee in a PowerPoint presentation, because what it does, it makes it easier for you to be able to talk to them as well, and it's a very professional look as well.
Okay.
Okay, here we are in Blackboard. You see here APSL, template, and materials. Do you see where I am?
Yes, sir.
You click on that. And this is where you're going to find everything. This is the template that you followed. This is the helpful hints document where I was talking from.
Okay.
This is a completed example, a whole APSL completed example from the beginning to the end with every task in it. These are good documents to use, and you'll hear me all the time, and Dr. Revis say, make sure that you are using, and this is the same place where we put lots of other information that you can use. This is free stuff. We don't even charge you for this one. This
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like to think of the helpful hints is just adding a lot of details and specificity to the template. Because that rubric is kind of broad. If you look at that rubric that you're given in your course syllabus, it's kind of broad. You have to unpack it. And what we try to do, or what Dr. Stedman has done with those helpful hints, is try to unpack it and break it down for you. But you put your actual work in the template.
You're exactly right. And when I did the helpful hints, it was with a group, it was with some struggling, and I spent a whole weekend working on that, trying to put it in as much in layman's terms as I possibly could. So again, it's like Dr. Revis said, it's the same information in the task and the prompts, but I've tried to take it and put it in a language and lay it out as simplistically as I can, so that it's kind of like having a map to follow, a diagram to follow or something. So I hope it helps. It's not the gospel, and I'm sure there's some errors in there, or I could do some things maybe differently, but we do hope that it helps.
Dr. Stedman?
Yes.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the helpful hints. I think we all can appreciate that because it's laying it out for us. Just as a question of clarity, and I hope I'm not being redundant, what if my principal is a part of my PLC? Should I have a separate meeting or?
No, if your principal is a part of your PLC, you just simply explain that. And
okay,
because they're going to give you the approval in that. So that would be redundant to do something that you've already done.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Stedman?
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm Pfeiffer here. Hi. Yes, I want to ask a question about task 2, prompt number 2.
Okay.
In green, the green highlighted where it says once task 2 are complete, schedule a meeting with your principal leadership team to present the findings. Is that due as well on Sunday? Or you said we have the following week to submit
No, remember we said that we're asking you if you can go ahead and schedule that and you're ready to do that. But the meeting with your principal may not be able to come until after Sunday, but you will tell us in your narrative work that a meeting is scheduled and when it's scheduled the next week, and you'll resubmit it for our review after the meeting has been held.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
You are welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other questions? Again, these are good questions. Don't be afraid. We'd rather you ask us now.
Hey, Dr. Stedman.
Yes.
This is Ms. Wine. Just a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so when I emailed my principal the very first time, he said yes, sure, but he also told me to go to the assistant principal who will be, overseeing all of this. Do I still go to my principal again? Go to my assistant?
If your principal is allowing your assistant principal to make those decisions, and your assistant principal is in the role of being able to say, yes, you can move forward with this PLC based on your identified most pressing need, then you just simply say that in your narrative work, that your principal has given permission for your assistant principal to make that decision, and you move forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
That good question, Shalise.
Dr. Stedman, I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'm a little stressed thinking about all of this. We're a brand new school, and I was able to get one of the benchmarks from the beginning of last year for, I'm doing a math PLC. And I mean, I have some other math data and indicators, but I just got it today. Our team meets every Wednesday, so they really haven't had time. So I guess my fear is actually getting to a full data analysis with all of it. So in our 45 minutes to an hour meeting that we have in the morning, I guess so my question is there a possibility for me to give them like a platform in our Drive where they can submit their ideas based on the data, and kind of write up what they.
Megan,
does that make sense?
Yes, and again, many of you are working, are not at school, but you're working virtually at home and then back and forth at school. So whatever works for you, I have no problem with that. And again, now all of you, you've got to work with your team. But now a lot of this is going to be left up. You are the leader, so you're going to be doing more than your team. A lot of times you will have done a lot of the work and you are presenting to your team. Okay? You don't wait until you get in there and that you will have to begin doing some of the work. And again, you must use the team approach, but when you cannot get with your team, the work still must be done. So
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm not saying work independently, but sometimes you will have to be independent based on the circumstances.
In an ideal world, it's nice if you present the raw data to your team and together work through it. But you may have to already have it put together in some way that is very easily accessible to the team, so they can start looking and filtering through the data to come up with that most pressing need. So do whatever you need to do to be prepared in your limited time that you have with them.
Right. And Megan, that's a good question. But the thing is, many of you already have a pretty good idea what the weaknesses are in your school or the weakest area is. Sometimes you're surprised when you get there and you realize that it's not quite what you thought. But most of the time, So, just all of you guide the process. Work smart and guide the process. This is part of leadership. Dr. Revis and I, as principals, as superintendents, we guided the process all of our career. We never waited until we got in there and said, have at it. We went in already. We pretty much knew many times what the answer should be and what it was going to be, but we went through the process knowing that because we had done our preparation ahead of time.
Dr. Stedman, can I ask a question about the task 2 within the collaborative data analysis piece?
Sure.
So my school we're very small. We're about, 235 students, K-5. So we actually, for looking at subgroups and things like that, we don't have enough students within the numbers to actually create subgroups. So would I just kind of explain that within the narrative?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And again, all of you are going to have different situations. Some of you are going to be very unique based on, I had a school one time that was up close to the Tennessee line. They had a point something. How can you have a 0.2 or a 0.1 nurse at your school? You understand what I'm saying? But it
right.
was so small that when you looked at, and when the information went to the evaluator sent it back, and I had to intercede because I had been in constant conversation with that person the whole semester. So when it went to the evaluator, I had to go to bat for this person because it was for real. I mean, she was not making this stuff up. And I never knew anything could be that small. A school could be that small, but it was.
Right.
That
I mean,
small.
35 third grade students in my school. So
Yeah.
that is, I mean, that's not enough for
No,
subgroups. So,
And
okay.
again, let me remind all of you, you can only work with what you have.
Okay.
And we understand that. And when Lizzie, when you explain the size of your school and that tells a story right there about, so it's going to be so much differently than a person that has 750 students at their school. And we understand that they're going to have more options to pull some data and things. Actually, it's harder when you're a smaller school. It really is.
It is.
Guys,
It
please
is looking at the growth of what has to happen, and it's very hard to meet or exceed what we're finding when you have 35 kids in third grade.
Right. And you're going to find too, as you continue to dig in this process, the light bulb's going to come on more and more and more as you realize, you're beginning to realize a lot of things already. As you see that. Megan, coming back to your question, you said you're a new school. And again, remember, there is information out there, but you can't pull what you don't have. Work with what you've got. Just remember that.
And we were pulling some of the district data.
Yeah.
Since we pull from, we have 35 schools. We pull from 29 of those schools in the district. So I feel like using district data is a good indicator.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to have to do in that situation, because there's no way that you don't have time to look at 29 different schools.
Okay.
You don't have time.
And guys, you need to remember that Dr. Stedman and I are practitioners at heart. Yes, we're adjunct instructors, but we've been there and done that. Now, I personally have never been there in COVID times, but we understand about small schools, new schools, all those kinds of things. If you have a question, just reach out to us, but explain things in your narrative too.
Okay. And I'm going to say again, please, if you want to be successful in this program, you've got to keep up with your work on schedule. It's not fair, again, it's not fair to your team that you're working with. If you're slack on your work and you don't get your work turned in on time, it holds them up sometime on what they're to do. That's not fair to that team. So you signed up for this. You're paying good money for this. Get your money's worth. Now, you're going to get it out of Dr. Revis and me, because we're going to push you. We're going to push you just as hard as we can push you, because we want the best people out there working with our children. And you think about this. If there's something wrong with you and you've got to go to the doctor and you know there's something wrong with you, do you want to go to a doctor that made C's and D's and just barely got by? You want the very best doctor, don't you? And you're going to do that for yourself. You're going to do it for your family. So why should we not want the very best principals in our school, the very best administrators in our school? That is what Dr. Revis and we're going to push you, because we want you to be the very best. I don't want my name to be attached to something that's not the very best. I've told my son many times, I said, you got my last name. I said, you better represent it well everywhere you go, because I said, you're carrying my last name. And all of you are carrying my last name and Dr. Revis's last name right now. We want you to be the very best.
And guys, this is probably one of the toughest weeks coming up. This is a huge task. Not only are you just aggregating data, but now you've got to write it up into a narrative and do your tables and charts and graphs and all that stuff. This is a huge task. Just hang in there. Like I say, don't get behind. Don't get bogged down in the weeds. Use the data you have and move on. It may not be the whole picture of what you would love to be able to present or what you would love to be able to look at. Use the data that you have and move on. Okay?
And next week, I think, because it's such a big task, Dr. Revis, most of our time next week is, I'm not even going to look at a lot of other stuff. I think we're going to camp out with task 3 next week, so that we can make sure that you are fully clear on that. So already just know that we're not going to be going in a lot of different directions next week, I think that it's important that we camp out there and make sure that you're ready to get through that task. Okay. Well, this has been a good class. Great questions. Great. And guess what? All of you, you're going to be all right if you do what we tell you to do. And again, if you have not turned my work in, I want to see my work, and I want to see it soon. And that's what you would tell your students in school. You wouldn't put up with it in school, so why should I put up with it? I'm not. That's because I care. Anyway, well, good night, everybody, and we'll see you on Thursday night.
Dr. Stedman, one more question. I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm sorry.
Yes, I submitted accidentally both peer reviews in the same spot. So I just want to make sure I get credit for both.
Okay. What you'll have to do, Kim, is go back and, is this Kim?
Yes.
Kim, make sure you submitted one. You have to find out, you have to look and see which one you got credit for, and the one you didn't get credit for, you have to resubmit it in the next box.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Good evening.
Okay. Okay. We'll see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.